We will continue for our session yesterday. Yesterday, we finished module number 4 and module number 5, and these two modules covered the context. The clause 4 for organization context and clause 5 for the leadership. And after we make the analysis which we require for the organization XYZ, and we understood the mission, vision, goals, objectives, strategy, values, products, services, and so on. We came for some conclusions and some important information about the primary assets, about the secondary assets, the importance of ISMS implementation for XYZ company for protecting the business processes, and what are these processes, including the development SDLC processes, service desk processes, development processes, project management processes, and what are the supporting services as the network, tools, software, hardware, facilities. And we also went through the clause number 5 for the leadership, and we make a commitment, the management make a commitment for the ISO implementation by integrating the security policy or developing, developing the security policy. Also, they develop the rules and responsibilities for the ISMS implementation in the company. And they assigned the required resources for the implementation of ISMS, and these resources covers the, these resources cover the budget, the people, the time, facilities, the hardware, the software, the tools, and all the required resources mandatory and necessary for the implementation of the ISO and ISMS. Today, we will continue for another module, which is a very important module. And this module is considered as a backbone module for any security operations. It is the risk management. Risk management, my friends, it's considered as the backbone. It's considered as the backbone for any security activity, because the risk management, it will show all the risks and what are the mandatory assets required to be protected, and what are the security controls required for this protection as well. Anyway, let's go through the module and discover this module. It's a very interesting module. I tried to make it very simple and give you quick overview about the risk management in the start. Then we will try to implement this approach into the XYZ company. Of course, this is the slide. It's a reminder for you about our workshop approach for all our clauses. And let's start now for module number 5, which is the planning. In the planning, it will cover the clause number 6. It will cover the clause number 6. Clause number 6 is the planning, and it has 3 sub-clauses: the actions to address risks and opportunities, and we will have also the information risk assessment, and we have the risk treatment plan. If you don't mind, please, can you mute your mics? Thank you. As you will see, as you can see here, that most of the module or the clause, it covered the risk assessment, and we covered the risk assessment in clause number 6 before in the theory, but we will cover it here in more details, and we will try to implement it in the XYZ company with some examples. Okay, can I have your attention, please? If you don't mind, I really want you to concentrate on this slide.
لا ما أقدر أحط لا ابعد يا ولد.
Please, can you mute your mic, please, if you don't mind? My friends, this module, it's very important. This module, it's really very, this slide, it's very important. And I really want your concentration because, you know, this slide, if you will work in the security field in the future, inshallah, this slide, it will consider your Bible. Usually you have to refer to this slide. This it will be a very important slide for the risk management processes. You have to understand this very well. Here I am saying again, I need your attention. I want you to understand this because this, it will not help you in ISO. Risk management, it is the backbone of security processes and activities, whatever it is. It can, you want to build business continuity, you want to build instant management program, you want to review your security infrastructure controls, you want to do whatever, anything. Okay. Step number one, it will be the risk management program. Of course, before doing anything, you must have a definition for it. I want to implement the risk management in my organization. What do I need? I want to have the definitions and the objectives for the risk management. Then, number one, I want to define what are my objectives of the risk management. Why do I want a risk management? For example, I may want to implement ISO 27001, when risk management, it's one of the mandatories and the clauses of the ISO. Or it may be because I want to implement some new security controls in my organization and I want to make that everything it's under control and I can understand the assets and its criticality, then I will be able to implement the proper controls for it. I want to create an instant program. Then whatever the objective, why you want the risk management, it should be very clear. Number two, you must have a leadership and commitment. Again, you remember when we said that leadership and commitment, it's a mandatory requirement for all the management systems and for the risk management program as well. Again, you will find in the ISO, we have the same definitions and sub-context for the leadership and commitment. We are exactly the same. Leadership or top management, we have to provide me the resources, we have to develop the risk management policy, we have to define rules and responsibilities for the risk management and so on. Then I have to appoint a risk manager. A risk manager who will be responsible for the risk management. I have to define the roles and responsibilities. For example, what is the roles and the responsibilities of the risk manager? The risk manager, he have to manage the risk team. He have to develop the activities of the risk management. He have to arrange with the business processes to understand their processes and what are the assets of the company and make the mandatory design and so on. Again, what is the responsibility of financial department? Financial department, we are responsible to perform a cost-benefit analysis for the risk management and for security controls. What is the role of the top management? The top management, we have to provide the resources, we have to develop risk management policy and so on. Then these are the roles and responsibilities which we have to concentrate on. Also, you have to define the accountability and ownership criteria. You have to make sure that there is a compliance with the rules and responsibilities, that each one understands his responsibilities in a proper way. Besides, that the ownership of the risks and controls is very clear. You have to define what is the risk management policy. And as we agreed before, policy, it's owned by the top management. We have to develop the policy. This is a policy, it will show the intent of the management and the objectives of the risk management in the company. And risk management, you know, it's a part of the governance of any organization, and it should be a part of the business processes. And this, it should be very clear in the policy. Also, we have to define a specific approach, how the risk assessment it will be performed. Here for the approaches, we have some sort of quantitative, qualitative, and so on, and we will cover this in more details in the next few slides. We have to define the methodology. You have to define the methodology. Do you know what do we mean by methodology? What is the definition of methodology?
Methodology is a way to approach something, an ideology of how to approach something.
Okay, that's right. The methodology, it is the way to do something. The way to do something. How you will do the risk assessment? We have multiple methods and popular methods in the market which it can be used. And we will cover this also later within few slides. Finally, we have to define what are the risk management activities. For example, the initial risk management, when we have to review or regularly the risk management analysis, say every year. ISO mandates that there will be a review for the certification every 3 years, and so on. And all these activities should be very clear. Finally, you have to provide the resources. You have to provide the resources for the risk management program. That's phase number 1 for the risk management. Phase number 2, it will be the context establishment. And by the way, my friends, it will be exactly the same as what we discussed the day before yesterday. Context establishment, it will try to understand the organization context. We have to understand the processes, measures, vision, activities, stakeholders, what are they, expectations, what is the objectives of the risk management program, what is the basic criteria, and we will discuss this basic criteria in more details for evaluation and for some important definitions, and we will cover this within next few slides. And finally, you have to define the scope of boundaries of the risk management program. Step number 3, or process number 3, it will be risk identification. In risk identification, you have to define assets, the assets value, what are the threats, and what are the existing controls, what are the consequences of the risk, or in other words, the impact of the risk, and what are the vulnerabilities. And what are the vulnerabilities for the assets. Step number 4, it will be risk analysis. You have to define what is the risk methodology, and we have to define for each risk what is its impact on the organization business or its consequences, and what is the likelihood or probability that this risk happened or not. And finally, we have to calculate the risk level. All this information, we will cover it today in more details. In risk number 5, process number 5, we have to evaluate the risk. We define the risk. We define the risk level. Is it high, low, medium, or critical? Then we have to define what will be the action taken. Sometimes we say, okay, drop this risk. It will not make any major consequence for the company, or it may be critical, and we have to take some countermeasures, or safeguards as well, to protect against the risk. Risk treatment, how you will mitigate the risk, what are the options of mitigating the risk, and this you will find the residual risk definition in this step. You will have the risk acceptance, that we have to accept the risk treatment plan, and you have to accept the residual risk as well. Finally, it will be the risk monitoring. And this is what we have to monitor the risk, because as we mentioned, life is dynamic. We have a lot of things which are changed, and this it can affect the risk level. In some situation, for example, as we mentioned before, in Saudi Arabia, we don't have any natural disasters, but after the flood, which we faced in Jeddah twice, now we have to take it in our consideration. Then before this flood, if we say natural disasters in Jeddah or in Saudi Arabia, it may be low. We don't care about this. It's very low because probability it's almost zero. But now, no, it may be high because it can happen, and this happened before, and we have the bad experience out of it, and we have to take it in our consideration because it affects a lot of business sectors especially in Jeddah market. Anyway, step 3, 4, 5, we are call it risk assessment. Step 3, 4, 5, we are call it risk assessment. In risk, you will find that the terminologies sometimes we are confusing, because people, when you would say risk management, risk assessment, risk evaluation, risk treatment, when people we are consider that all these definitions are the same. But here I try to make life very easy. By highlight the important definitions for the risk management. What is the risk management itself? The risk management itself, as you can see, it's an ongoing process. It's ongoing process when it will have the same concept for BCDA and for the continual improvement. And you remember this, which is plan BDCA, sorry. B is plan, D is do, C is the check, and A is for act. But risk management is ongoing process for identifying risks and opportunities, and to implement plan to address them, and to show you how the organization can respond for these risks and opportunities. Well, this is the definition of the risk assessment. Question, do you know what is the difference between risks and opportunities? What is the definition? What is the difference between risks and opportunities?
Risk is a negative, is a chance of something negative happening, and opportunity is the chance of the occurrence of anything positive, and a good opportunity or what's similar.
Okay. Risks, this it will be the negative effect on the company, and opportunities, it will be the positive effect on the company. And of course, in the risk management, we have to mitigate the risk, to minimize the risk. And for the opportunities, we have to exploit the opportunity and improve its effect on the organization. As you can see in this definition, risk and opportunity. Okay, what is the risk assessment? Risk assessment, this it will describe how we describe the risk and its effect on the company in form of consequences and likelihood. Then risk assessment, it will help you to quantify or qualify the risk effect on the company, and to prioritize the risks and its consequences or impacts and its likelihood or probability. Let me ask you another question. What is the difference between quantitative and qualitative approaches?
Quantitative is trying to measure it monetarily or financially speaking. What is the more financially damaging risk? Qualitative describes the difficulty of trying to treat that risk and the amount of damage it will cause the company physically, giving it a high priority. Not unlike quantitative, which can only get a high priority if it causes a lot of financial damages.
Okay, that's right. Then when we are saying quality, it will be in the form of subjective. It is subjective. You mean what do we mean by subjective? We have some risks and we will classify these risks in form of low, high, medium, critical, and so on. But when we say quantitative, then this means we have to define exactly in financial way or in numbers what is the effect of this company, of this risk on the company and how it will affect its performance and goals and objectives. And this quantitative, it will be more accurate. Qualitative, it will be accurate, but of course, in the form of subjective compared with the quantitative. Okay. The risk analysis, you have to define what are the consequences and the likelihood and the risk level. This, it will help you to define the consequences, likelihood, and risk.
أنا ماشي في المعلقات كويسة. بوصل على
شباب ميوت المايك لو سمحتوا. ميوت المايك لو سمحتوا.
ميوت اللي كويسة هي موزة اللي كويسة. اوكي كويس والله يا ربي زبط.
Okay. Risk analysis, as we explained that we will find out the consequences, likelihood, and risk level. Okay, what is the risk evaluation? This risk evaluation, it will compare the risk assessed level. Now, in the risk analysis, we make some analysis for the risks and we define the risk level. Then we will compare the risk level to the risk acceptance or evaluation criteria, as we will explain later, and to see what will be our action. We need to mitigate the risk or we have to drop this risk because it's not important for us. Risk treatment, how we will treat the risks. We have four different ways to treat the risks. It will be the mitigate the risk, to minimize the consequences, to minimize its probability. We have to share the risk or transfer the risk, and we have to avoid the risk, or finally we can accept the risk. We will discover all these definitions in more details in the next few slides. The risk acceptance, that we have to accept a risk, and we have to accept a risk if its effect is minimal and it will not affect the company, or if the cost for the control, it will be higher than the cost of the loss of the risk itself. Quantitative and qualitative risk analysis, it's already discussed later. What are the vulnerabilities? Vulnerabilities, this is a very important definition in the risk assessment, and it's considered as weakness in the assets. And this weakness, it can be tangible or non-tangible. It can be in some weakness points in process workflow. It may be a bug in a software or a backdoor. It can be a software design problem. It can be a bug in hardware, asset, or control, and so on. Then whatever, any weakness in the asset, whatever it is it tangible or non-tangible, it will consider be as a vulnerability. Okay, I know that we have a lot of definitions, and I know that it will be a little bit confusing, but I think it will be very helpful for you when you review it. We will cover this in more details in the next few slides, but it will be considered, as I told you, as your Bible. You will return back to this recording, I am quite sure, in the future, because it will have a very valuable information for you, inshallah. What are the threats? Threats, it is considered as the actions or the events which it will facilitate by the vulnerability to take an unwanted impact. In other words, these are the threat factors which it can exploit a vulnerability and cause a damage for your company. And these threats, they have a lot of categorization as natural threats for volcanoes, flooding, grains, whatever, human threats, software threats, hardware threats, and so on. In people who are specialized in risk assessment, they can refer to some references for the threats and their categories over the internet. ISO 27005 for risk assessment, we are providing risk, threats and vulnerability categories as well. You will find here risk treatment plan. If you can remember the risk treatment plan, we covered the definition in the clause number 6 before, and we said that this it will be the action plan for all the risks which it could be, controls for all the risks which it could be implemented by the company. Residual risk. What is residual risk? Residual risk is the risk, whatever any risk that it will remain after the implementation of a control. Whatever any risk, it will remain after the implementation of the controls. In some situation, we'll say, okay, the residual risk, it may be minimum, small, and it can be accepted. Of course, we have to evaluate it. Statement of applicability for the SOA. This, you remember when we said that we have the Annex A, and Annex A, it have 114 controls. We said that according to the needs of the organization, you may need to choose all the controls or choose part of controls and drop others. And whatever the controls you will choose or you will drop, you have to identify, is it mandatory or not based on your organization business field, and you have to give justification. Why did you choose these controls and which risks it will mitigate? Or you have to define what are the controls which you neglect and why did you neglect them. There may be these controls are not valid for your organization or whatever any reasons. Okay, these are we covered the definitions. I know that it may be boring and still somehow confusing. Then let's go in more details about these definitions, then we can understand the concept in more practical way. You remembered when we said that the risk management program, we have, the risk management, we have risk management program, we have the context, we have a lot of other processes which we covered. I will try to remind you very quickly about this. These are the 8 processes: risk management, the context, the risk identification, risk analysis, risk evaluation, risk treatment, risk acceptance, risk monitoring. Now we will go through one by one, and we have to discover all these information from our experience and to implement it in the company. Number 1, risk management program. What are the information which we want to understand? First of all, we have to understand what are the risk management objectives. We have to get the leadership commitment. We have to appoint a risk manager. We have to develop the roles and responsibilities. We have to define risk owner criteria. Who will own the risk? Risk owner, this is the one who will be responsible for managing the risk. and we have to develop the risk management policy. This must be done by the management, and we have to define the risk methodology and activities. These are the information which you have to keep it in your mind when you will go to XYZ company to implement the ISO for them. And these are things which we will try to apply it in the next phase. For the context, I will not go through this because we killed this point in module number 3, but you have to understand the company and you have to understand the stakeholders and the objectives. Also, in risk identification, you have to define what are the assets, you have to define the assets value, you have to define the threats, you have to define the controls, you have to define consequences of the risks and vulnerabilities. Do you remember, my friends, that we already discovered the assets? When we make the analysis for the context and organization context and for the what we can say, the leadership, we found out the assets, and we said that we have primary assets and we have secondary or supporting assets, and according to the importance of these assets, we are able to understand the asset value. And these 2 points, we are already defined in the previous phases. Now we have to define what are the threats, we have to define the existing controls, we have to define the impact, we have to define the vulnerabilities. In the risk analysis, you have to define what be the risk methodology, impact, likelihood, and risk level. Tell me, who is the person who can help you to discover these points?
I assume the IT team who deal with these, who notice these attacks daily, or the security team.
Okay, any other answer?
The chief security officer.
Okay, what else? Any other answer? Okay, no, not the security team. Security team, they are not involved in this process. They can manage it, but they are not involved. Who can help in this? It will be the business owner. It will be the business owner, because the business owner, we are understanding their processes, assets, vulnerabilities, weakness, threats, controls, impact on the business, and so on. By the way, all this information, as you saw yesterday and the day before yesterday, we did not speak technically at all. We spoke about business, about context, about the company, about leadership, about commitment, about security management for security policy and rules. But now what was the role of security team? Nothing. We are doing nothing. Then just imagine if the risk assets, it's a process, manufacturing process for a specific product, then IT security, they are not aware about this at all. They don't know what do you mean by even the manufacturing process. But when you go to the risk, to the team, the business team, and ask them, the owner, and ask him about his process, he will give you more details about the assets, how the activities, the strategy, how it's going, what are the weaknesses, what are the point of strength, what are the threats which we are facing, and so on. At this point, you should make a meeting with the business owner, not the IT. Okay. In step number 5, or process number 5, for the evaluation, you have to compare the assessed risks level with the risk evaluation criteria. And in the risk treatment, you have to define what are the risk treatment options for the assessed risks. Now we are trying to summarize the steps which we want to implement. I'm trying to take it step by step. Now we are saying these steps which are required by the risk management program, the processes, what are the information which you have to conclude it from the company. These are the information. In the risk acceptance, you have to accept the risk treatment plan, the treated risks, residual risks. And finally, you must monitor the assessed risks level, and you have to assess for any emerging new risks as well. Okay, now these are the information which we want to cover. I want to just to go through some definitions then to be clear for you. Risk treatment, what are the risk treatment options? Risk treatment option, it will be mitigate. What is mitigate? That you have to install some security controls when it will minimize the impact of the risk or the likelihood of the risk. The other option, it will be avoidance. Avoidance, this means that you have to kill this risk. If I say that, okay, my friends, we have to, the marketing plan came and said that we have to install a website when our customers will be able to see our products and services. But when we discovered that there will be a lot of attacks and we are not able to make the protection, or the protection, it will be very expensive compared to the value which we will get, when we will say we have to avoid this risk. Avoid this risk means that don't publish this website, drop it. Of course, it will not be an acceptable option for the business, because in some situations we will tell you, no, we need it. This is a business requirement. You are a security enabler. You are not stopping our business. Then in this case, we have to think about the option for mitigation. Risk sharing, this as example, it will be the insurance. Say I want to that my data center, it will be permanent, لا قدر الله, for example. Then what will be the option? The option I can make, okay, insurance. Then if I faced a fire in my data center, then the insurance, it will be me, for example, 10,000, 10 million real or whatever. It depends upon the size of the data center. Finally, you have to accept the risk, the acceptance. When do you accept the risk? Two possible situations. Situation number one, if the risk impact, it will be less than the cost of the control, or if the risk may be measured, but for some business requirements, it is mandatory. For example, let me give you an example. In some situation, when we are going to organizations, we are finding that we are using a very old-fashioned application, maybe programmed by COBOL or some programming languages, which it's retired maybe 10 years or 20 years ago. But for some reason, they don't have the budget to migrate these applications into a new version when they are still using. These applications, as we mentioned, they are old-fashioned. We don't have any security controls. We don't have any protection for data or whatever. And we represent risk, and the risk also because we don't have support, we don't have updates, we don't have any company which it's working on it. Anyway, again, business, they understand this and they are saying, okay, we don't want to drop this application. It's mandatory for our business. We know that it's risky and we have to accept this risk because we will not be able to drop one of the main components in our business. This is one of the scenarios which you have to accept the risk. Okay. Statement of applicability. We discussed this before, and just I give you a quick idea about it just right now. And this statement of applicability, it will be a document which you have to choose the controls from Annex A, and it will contain the justification. Why did you choose these controls, or why did you drop these controls? Risk treatment plan. The risk treatment plan, this is a plan which shows how you will treat the risks which you figured out. and it may be treatment plan. Some of them it will say mitigate, some others it will say transfer, some others accept, and so on. And these are the components which it should be in the risk treatment plan. You have the risk description, risk level, treatment option, the start and end date of implementing the control, monitoring and measurement, performance measures, resources required, who will be the responsible person, the control activities reporting, to whom it should be reported, and so on. These are the components which it can appear in the treatment plan. Of course, there may be other components. It depends upon the complexity of the organization which implement the risk plan. If it's a complicated and big company, it may find more factors here. Okay. Till this moment, I can understand that some of you cannot have the clear idea about risk management, and it's confusing. Okay, this is normal. Risk management, it's not an easy topic, but let's now implement it and give you the practical example, which I think it will make life very easy for you. To make life easy, we will choose 5 scenarios or 5 risks then to implement the risk management principles and definitions which we studied in the previous slides. Scenario number one, or we can call risk number 1, that the customers and partners' privacy data, it will be leaked. Customers and partners' privacy data, it may be leaked. Privacy data, it can be the name, address, email, number, social number, and all the personal information which it will be related to persons. Scenario number 2, or risk number 2, that the customer's application code are stolen. The codes are stolen from the company. This risk number 2. Risk number 3, that the XYZ company website is out of service due DDoS. Do you know what is DDoS?
The DDoS, distributed denial of service.
You are right.
A lot of machine, a spam one device.
Sorry, can you repeat again?
It is when a lot of the different machines send a huge volume of data in a small amount of time to one network or one machine.
Okay, good. But let me give you a very important issue here, my friends. When we are speaking in security, when we are saying denial of service, unfortunately, we have to think about the network bandwidth denial of service. But this is not the case in security. I can deny your service by a problem of a virus or a problem in the processor or memory or whatever, anything, it will deny the service. Then please don't think that when we say denial of service, it will be only the application, I mean the bandwidth utilization. And for example, I don't know if you are aware about this. There was a virus called NIMDA. Did you hear about this virus? It's a very old virus, NIMDA. Do you hear about it?
LIMDA, I've heard of the mathematical formula of LIMDA.
Okay, you know what NIMDA is doing? NIMDA virus, it will create 4 processes on your PC or server, on Windows in general. And each process, it will reserve 25% of the processor. This means that 100% of the processor, it will be reserved with these 4 processes. Then if you are trying to do any other thing, processor, it's not free to do it. Then it seems that the machine, it hangs. It seems that the machine, it hangs. It's not hanging, it's working in the background, but it's working with some processes. Then if you will go to what we call it, the processes, and you will kill these 4 processes when you will find that the machine is working again. And this it was some sort of denial of service. Okay, when the denial of service, that's scenario number 3, that the XYZ company website is out of service due to denial of service. Okay, scenario number 4, that the professional developers are leaving XYZ company to its competitor. It's leaving the XYZ company to its competitor. This is another risk number 4. Finally, risk number 5, that losing business opportunities due to poor security processes and procedures in XYZ company. XYZ company, they are caring about security controls in their applications, which is delivered to the customers. But inside the company, they have very poor security processes and procedures. And this, it can represent a risk for them. Then these are the 5 risks which we will consider in our this module. Then you can be able to understand the risk management concepts and how you can implement the risk management basics which we studied in the previous channels. Previous slides. Okay, what are the topics which we will cover in, or we will try to implement in XYZ company? We want to study the to develop a risk management program for XYZ company. We have to understand the context establishment of XYZ company. We have to define risk identification process, risk analysis process, risk evaluation process, risk treatment, risk acceptance, risk monitoring, and statement of applicability and risk treatment. Okay, risk management program. What are the objectives? We have to define. You remember when we said that in the risk management program, we have to define what are the objectives for XYZ company. Then, number 1, we have to protect and secure XYZ company assets to achieve its goals and objectives. Very clear and makes sense. We have to identify and classify XYZ company risks. Okay, we have to define the risks based on its effect on business goals and objectives. Also, we have to evaluate the company risks and what are the appropriate action or treatment to handle these risks. Define acceptable risk level. What is the acceptable risk level? You know, when we say that the acceptable risk level, this is the risk level which it will be accepted by or accommodated by the company, and it will not take any action regarding this risk, because it will be low risk level. Whatever any impact, it can be accommodated because it will have minimal effect on its operation. But what is this risk level? Is it low, medium, high? What is it? We have to define the acceptable level which the XYZ company can accommodate. Also, we have to make monitoring and measuring for the assessed risks and whatever any new emerging risks. And these are the objectives for the XYZ company. You have to write down, you now take care. Whatever any information we will cover in this module in planning, it must be documented. It's mandatory for the company to have this information documented in our situation. Okay, then these are the objectives for the risk management program in our XYZ company. For the leadership and commitment, we have to provide the required resources. We have to define the required resources. It's funding, it may be people, it will be facilities, hardware, software, whatever the requirement. Communicate the importance of risk assessment program to employees. We have to issue some, what we can say, security awareness to the people. we have to integrate the risk management program in the business processes. We have to encourage the risk-based management decisions in XYZ company. This is very important because risk management is based on the governance. And if you want to take a decision, you must have a risk management based decision to make sure that this information are done in a proper way and this it will not affect your business and matching your business. Also, it should go with regular management review of the risk management program and process. And finally, we must have the continual improvement program for the risk management. We covered now the risk management. We defined the objectives for XYZ company. It's already defined. We write it down for them. And we define the leadership and commitment, and we write it down to them. Then now we have to hire the risk manager. And the XYZ company, we will see who will be the risk manager. But we have to appoint a risk manager for the risk program. The risk owner criteria, we have to define the risk owner, who will be responsible for the risk, who will be responsible for managing the risk. Here, XYZ company defined that the risk owner, it will be the risk process owner. Okay, then XYZ company defined that the risk owner, he will be the owner of the business processes. This makes sense because as we mentioned that the risk business owner, we have the full information about their processes, assets, vulnerability, threats, then we know the process very well and they will be responsible for the risk owner. Okay, and we have to provide the authority and resources for the risk owner when we can manage the risks. Whoever the risk owner, we have to provide them the required resources and authority, then they will be able to mitigate these risks. And the risk owner, we have to coordinate with the risk manager and the CISO or IT manager. Why? To make and implement, to design and implement the appropriate controls. To design and implement the appropriate controls. The risk management policy, this, as we explained before, this policy, it should be developed by the management. It will have the objectives for the risk management in your company and what is the role of the risk management in the organization, processes, decision maker, roles and responsibilities, and so on. Okay, this is a very important slide, the methodology. As your colleague here mentioned now, methodology is the way of doing something. We have some methods of or methodology for risk management. These are some popular methods in the market: eBIOS, Octave, Mehari, and CRAM. Of course, this is not the right time to discuss this, but these are the methods or the way where you can make development of these processes. If you are interested in these things, you can search for it in the internet and it will provide you more details about it. This is each one of them, it have a course for about 5 days, each one of them. But what I want you to know that there are some methodologies which are standard in the field, and these are the methods which you can choose from. Okay. Sorry, I faced a problem with the slides. I will check what happened. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen, Doctor.
Okay. And this would cover the risk management methodology, and we covered this slide. Okay. In risk management approach, we have here multiple approaches. The approach number one for risk management, it will be asset-based approach, that you have to define what are the assets and go individually for each asset and check what are the vulnerabilities, threats, and define the risk level for each asset. The other scenario, the other option or approach, it will call scenario-based. What is scenario-based? You have to define a specific scenario, for example, flooding, and this flooding, it will cover multiple assets, for example, and you have to define what is the effect of this scenario on your organization. From your point of view, which one is better, asset or scenario, and why?
I believe the best is asset base, because
Why?
Because when we define the assets first, we know what is the item that we must protect the most. But scenario based may be more vague and may leave a lot of occasions that we don't think of.
Okay. As usual, in life, you will never find something which is better than the other. Each one, it will have its pros and cons. For the asset-based, the main problem that it will concentrate on a specific asset, which is, it will make life very easy. It will make life very easy because it's a single asset. It will be very easy to understand what are the weaknesses, what are the threats, and we can define the risk level. But the main problem with the asset-based risk management, that if you had any event which affect multiple assets together, then this means that their effect may be higher than the effect of the risks which it will affect the assets itself only. And for example, if we say, okay, I have a virus which it will affect the desktop. Okay, I make analysis for the desktops, Windows desktops, and what are the possibility of the attacks, impact, probability, and so on. But when we had the virus and it infected the whole network, it does not affect the desktops only. It affects the desktops, servers, database servers, so on and so. And it affects multiple assets. And the effect of the virus here, it will be more dangerous than the one which we expect. When all our expectations and design for the risk management, it was not accurate due to the spread of the risk over multiple assets. But again, it will be very easy because to do the risk assessment for specific assets, it will be easier. For scenario-based, it may solve the problem of the asset because scenario-based, it will be a scenario. Okay, I have a virus. Then in this case, it will cover all the assets and it will solve the problem of the asset-based. But again, whatever any scenario you will plan for it, it will not be the real scenario which you will face when you are have a scenario and you will make all the steps for protecting against this scenario. But the real scenario, it may be a little bit different or maybe far different from the actual scenario, and you will find that you need some more medication regarding to this scenario. Then it depends which one it will be better. It depends upon the situation and upon the objectives and upon the requirements of your company and the business and goals to choose which one it will fit better in the company. But you have to understand what are the pros and cons of the asset and based scenarios. Okay. I think this it will be very important. Basic criteria it will be very important. I will beg your pardon because I want to go to Maghrib prayer. Inshallah, we will have 10 minutes. But just I want to understand something, my friends. Now we have only 14. Where are the others? Before we were almost 29 or 30. What happened? Is this normal? Okay. We will have 10 minutes for prayer and see you soon. Thank you.